You're listening to Retail Sound Bites.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kantar Retail Sound Bites podcast for the week of June 23rd. I'm Barry Thomas, our senior global thought leader, serving clients on global commerce, marketing, and future tense topics. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and joining us on every show is my pod partner, Rachel Dalton.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Dalton, head of retail insights for the Americas here at Kantar. Our podcast is intended to share knowledge and insights on both North America and international retail and restaurant verticals. We kick off each podcast with a news and notes section to share innovative and impactful stories from the past 2 weeks. And then we introduce our Kantar experts and/or our guest speakers to share insights on critical topics in commerce today. And today we are very excited to welcome back our friend and colleague, Andy Murray, Executive Chairman of Saatchi & Saatchi X and founder of bigQuest, who is just recently arrived back to the U.S. from Cannes. So we're excited to hear what he learned there. But first, back over to you, Barry, to kick us off officially with our news and notes.
Let's do it. I mean, Andy's not even 24 hours on the ground coming in from France. So, I mean, gosh, it's going to be fantastic learning with him as always. Just on the weekend front, Rachel, I guess 3 quick updates. I guess it's good news. It's a little embarrassing for us males, but Leslie now is the best golfer in the house.
Oh, very impressive. Tell her congratulations. Wow. I'm rooting for her.
I mean, we played with her yesterday, Lane and I did, and we're just like, what's happening? Wow. I mean, it's a little concerning. So, but we're happy for her, but we're struggling with it a little bit, Rachel, just to be honest. Let's see. Secondly, then we had a pool contest. Right?
Okay.
Came back here, had the boys back here, and Lane won that hands down basketball dunking from the pool. Of course, when you're 22, that's a little easier to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're kind of gearing up for a big July 4th kind of pool party event. Should be good. We're having a few folks over. Rachel, if you were in town, you'd be coming over, and so hopefully that'll be good.
Oh, sounds amazing. I would totally be there if I were there, for sure. I'm sure you throw awesome parties too, Barry. I had a great weekend too, like super festive. I started out Friday night with a bunch of girlfriends and some of our kids, and we went to our lake, which is in town, and it was a gorgeous night. So watched the sunset and had some wine and did some swimming. And Saturday, my son's team finished first in their league for their soccer league, so they were invited to the New York Cup. So we went out to the middle of Long Island, and they didn't win, but they still had a great. It was kind of like an icing on the Sunday kind of thing, anyway, because they had such a great season. So it was fun. And another party celebrating a friend who opened a restaurant that's been really successful. So she moved locations, and that was a real fun time. And then just here Sunday, just kind of continued with like a neighborhood barbecue. So it was just kind of like a real first day of summer, and like real summer stuff over the weekend. So it was really, really good, really fun.
Look at you. Your social calendar is always full. Now, let me ask you this, Rachel. It's been raining so much here. I mean, it's been raining up in the Northeast. Hopefully, we won't have. Let's take a break from the rain, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it was, but now we are in an extreme heat wave. It is 90s up to probably, my guess is it will reach 100 plus tomorrow, and just high humidity. So extreme heat warnings, but I'm just happy it's summer. Like, we have real summer now, real time to be outdoors and swim. And so we'll get through this next 2 hot days, and then it will moderate, hopefully. So sunny, finally.
I love it. I'm glad. I'm like you. Let's just get after it with summer. So
yeah,
love it. Well, I did a little bit. I was down in West Palm Beach, not exactly Palm Beach, but same place, same area they hold that NACDS event you and I were just at. So, that Digital Food and Beverage Summit, definitely learned a lot, and put out a blog on that. So I'm just going to share a couple learnings as we go along this morning. And so I wrote basically a blog on it, the top 10 takeaways from the 2025 Digital Food and Beverage Summit. So I'm just going to give 3 quick headlines. We're definitely seeing a splintering of social media preferences, which is a growth opportunity. Bazaar Voice did a very good job just sharing how, boomers, they really value generally, peer reviews and star ratings, let's say, on digital content, while Gen Z definitely prefers storytelling, and sort of emotional, real stories, if you will, and imagery. So just a fantastic job by those folks. Secondly, Gen Z just continues to buy from, creators, not just brands. And now essentially 60% of Gen Z shoppers are stating they are purchasing primarily behind creators in for many occasions and for many categories. And it was just, we all know this, but just kind of being around these challenger brands and with some of these social platforms, it's more, I think, compelling and robust than I maybe even thought was happening. And then third, there's no question data is the engine of modern growth. And there was a wonderful case story from Subaru, a little bit outside the industry, and the fact that they've harmonized, synchronized all of their data from the actual car dealership all the way to the manufactured into sort of a single source of truth. It's really, really, it's kind of been their biggest factor in their growth story. That's what they're telling, Wall Street and others, and they're leading with a data-first strategy, and they've just provided so much more insight, robust insight and foresight into their consumer, and it's clearly working. So those were just a few of some of the initial learnings there.
Yeah, really awesome. I know you learned a ton at that summit, Barry. And like you mentioned too, with social media, I mean, I think it's a much more profound influence than people think, or maybe, many of the big brands are starting to think based on, budgets being moved in pretty big ways into social media. But like the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, my kids, all of the things that they ask for come from what they see on social, like pretty much everything. So it's a huge game changer, I think, for brands and for retailers overall, for sure.
Exactly.
So news. So this was interesting. Many of you or our audience may have seen Amazon's recent published note that came from, it was an email from Andy Jassy to his employees at Amazon that was publicized on, about Amazon.com, which is where Amazon tells a lot of the stories about what they're doing strategically and a lot of their cool initiatives, and summed up at Amazon's Jassy's manifesto on AI. But really interesting read, and we could publish the link in the news and notes. But Andy Jassy talks about how technologies like generative AI in particular are really once in a lifetime. This is a technology that is once in a lifetime, and Amazon will continue to invest substantially behind it. And so he goes on to give a few examples of how they're currently using Gen AI, like Alexa Plus. That's Alexa, the personal assistant, which now can take on actions for customers in addition to providing information. Of course, we know Rufus, which is Amazon's AI shopping assistant, is already being used by tens of millions of customers. Beyond retail, they leverage Gen AI in fulfillment, for example, to improve inventory placement and demand forecasting and just delivery speed and just overall cost to serve. They use Gen AI in advertising to make it simpler for brands to create and optimize campaigns. And basically, the list goes on. But really, where he hones in on is the future, which really is technically here now because of the speed everything is moving in. But Amazon will be investing substantially in agentic AI, which, Barry, you've done a ton of work around, which Jassy says has the power to transform the entire business model. He says there will be billions of AI agents across all industry segments that will automate many of the tasks we're used to performing as humans today. He goes so far to say that there will be a reduction in Amazon's workforce as it gains more efficiencies with AI and agentic AI. But some jobs will go, but others will be created. There will also be new jobs in this environment that will be run by agents. And Jassy says that agents overall will enable Amazon teams to start any project at a much more advanced starting point than where they are today. And as we know, there will be less need for, like what he says, rote work, more time to innovate, more time to strategically think about what's next. Today, Amazon actually has over 1,000 generative AI applications and services that are either in process of being developed or already created. And he says that's only a small fraction of what he says the company will build over time. So really interesting read for anyone who hasn't had a chance to see that yet.
I'm so glad you captured that, Rachel. It's required reading of anyone in commerce. I mean, who won, Media Brand of the Year at Cannes? Well, Andy did, Amazon did, and they're leading on so much of everything. So I was glad you captured that. My quick takeaways were, you have to be accelerating enterprise AI across any company, just like they're doing. You kind of maybe want to partner with them. They're just so advanced of all the options. We all have to keep upskilling teams. He talks about it. Teams have to be faster, flatter, faster. And then there's this new, idea called B to A. We know what B to C is. We know what B to B is. Now it's B to A, and the A is agent.
Mm-hmm.
And whoa, so I have a blog coming out this week. I studied this for way too long. And so it's kind of a real thing, and it's good to see him allude to it. So I'm so glad you had that in here this week, Rachel.
Yeah, awesome. And I can't wait to read your blog, Barry. Sounds awesome.
Oh, well, we'll see. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm going to come back with a few more headlines from the Digital Food and Beverage Summit, just 3 quick ones. Rachel, I learned so much more about this idea of being a social first brand. If you said, well, why are challenger brands just always winning so often? Well, they just manufacture virality. What does that mean? Well, they just manufacture brand virality, and they do that by mobilizing hundreds and thousands of sort of micro and nano influencers to produce content that is really, frankly, orchestrated, but feels organic
Mm-hmm.
if you're on TikTok, let's say. And it's just a different way to go to market. And in many ways, it's a superior marketing model, frankly, that many legacy brands aren't using. So, wow, just learned so much about that. Secondly, boy, these smart barcodes, Rachel, they're going to reset the digital shelf. I learned a lot more about GS1. That's that digital link enabled 2D barcode that we're going to be using by 2027. Well, why would we use that? Well, there's just so many benefits to that. By the way, Walmart kind of cares about this, is sort of advocating it, so we're all going to use it. And it just provides of many benefits, more transparency. Yes, we talked about the Yuka app and how it's changing decisions at the store and elsewhere. This is going to even accelerate that even more. So just more transparency around the barcode. And as we know, the barcode in many cases is greater than brand storytelling. And then just lastly, CPGs are scaling retail media, but we saw a lot of digital data with too many CPGs lagging on the digital shelf. So the content health scores for many CPGs in different categories is only like 70 to 85%, which is causing problems with search share, digital share, e-commerce share. But we're spending so much money and time on retail media, which is wonderful, I guess. But if we don't have the foundation right on that digital shelf, Rachel, which you know all about, that's sort of a problem. So those were a couple learnings there.
Yeah, super interesting, Barry, too. And the smart barcodes I find fascinating because it's just another way to democratize just the omni shelf. So, you can see more than what's on the shelf, which marketers over time, you can put 3 words on the front label that you hope somebody will see, but most times, depending on the category, you're not reading the details on the back of the label. And so it's just a way to interact in a more dynamic way and get more information and more transparency, especially for ingredients or where things are sourced and manufactured, and just so much more opportunity too, I think, from a retail media standpoint, to leverage these codes to be able to see more and build stories around your brands. And anyway, I find that very fascinating. So super interesting. So for my next piece of news, another one on Amazon today. Today's an Amazon theme, I think, for me. But of course, Amazon recently announced its annual Prime Day event a few days back, and CNBC reported on that, and of course other news media as well. This year, Amazon Prime Day will take place over 4 days instead of 2. So that's new this year. They've extended the length of time. The event will run from July 8 to 11. I always tune in to, see what I can find on great deals. And new this year for Amazon will be what Amazon calls deal drops. So they're trying to promote that kind of excitement around something new each day that will only be available while supplies last. So like these limited time offers, which will be cool, kind of an entertaining and fun way to shop, which we know is where the trend is in retail overall. People want to be entertained and want to find joy while shopping. So that should be interesting. And then, of course, chain store age was the article I read, and others have talked about Walmart and Target's competing event. And they typically have their own midsummer promotional events around the time of Prime Day. Walmart's going to do deal days this year. It's going to run for 6 days, July 8 to 13. And new this year for Walmart is that their deals will be available both in-store and online. And Walmart Plus members, of course, will get early access a day early. Target Circle's coming back. They're running even longer, July 6 to 12, or I guess, a little bit longer than Amazon. And will have early access for its higher level of its Target Circle membership, which is called Target 360. They're going to do lots around back to school. I think we'll see all of these players doing back to school features, given that that's the time we're almost in. And Target in particular is going to have a really unique 20% off one-time coupon store-wide for students and teachers kind of before and after their Target Circle week. So lots of, I think we're going to see lots of cool things happening in a couple weeks and lots of interesting deals and promotions for all of us to take a look at.
Love it, Rachel. Do you typically buy something on Amazon when this happens?
Oh yeah, last year I bought probably too much on Amazon during Prime Day. But yeah, I'm always looking for what I can, things that I might need or just things that I'm not sure I need, and I'm like, oh, it's a great deal. I'm going to try it now. So it's a fun few days for me.
Well, I'll be interested to see what's the tariff impact. I feel like it's been a bit overblown, just kind of as a typical shopper. Yes, there's been some price increases, but nothing too draconian. But I think, out of stocks and pricing with what's happening with this Prime event and the others there will tell us a lot on that.
Yeah, for sure. And interestingly, Target in this particular article talked about how it's going to be holding prices steady on key back to school items, steady versus last year. So I'm sure we'll see some of that as well on key essentials.
Well, that's a good thing. All right. I just had two last points on sort of this Digital Food and Beverage Summit. One was, Rachel, I was really impressed with the Giant Food team there and their More Good Stuff gamified loyalty program that rewards nutritious choices, or what I would just call modern health choices. And their data shows that, look, 80% of shoppers walking in that Giant Food, they just walked in. What are they looking for? They're looking for healthier food and beverages, more so than ever. And so here's this loyalty program that rewards shoppers for purchasing healthier items. And they've actually sort of graded, hold on a minute, many food and beverage products with sort of, green, yellow, red. This is kind of what's happening over in Europe, no question. So I think this is an early signal for what we could see across more grocers. And I was very impressed with what I saw. And then lastly, Rachel, I was really given a PhD sort of curriculum in what's really, really happening with challenger brands. And I thought I knew a lot about challenger brands, and maybe I did or didn't, but I certainly walked away with that conference knowing much more, especially on the power of TikTok Shop. I mean, I was having many conversations with challenger brands. I'm not going to mention them, but TikTok Shop for many of these challenger brands is outselling Amazon 4-1, 6-1. I even heard 8-1. In fact, many merchants at leading retailers we all know well, they don't really want to hear so much about how you're doing on Amazon as a challenger brand. They want to hear and see what you're doing on TikTok Shop. Rachel, I heard this from the main stage several times. Then I broke off and spoke to these challenger brands. It's just more prolific than I realized. You can really build your brand first on TikTok Shop. Direct to consumer and Amazon may just be a lot less important. And I just saw tangible, stories of this from these entrepreneurs. And Rachel, kind of blew me away.
Yeah, well, I mean, we also talked previously, and we'll be talking with Andy in a little bit about his time at Cannes. But just this viral Gen AI advertising that was circulating with the kind of gorilla featured that started with this dentist office. That my kids came up to me, and I was looking at the video, and they said, "Mom, how do you know about that? Like, how do you know about that, Mom?" And they're like, "It's all over TikTok." Like, so it's everything is on TikTok, and really in that space of YouTube, TikTok for the younger generation, that's where everything starts. So definitely not a surprise, and definitely a game changer.
That's it.
So last but not least, big news. Big news is just today in the Wall Street Journal, CNS Wholesalers has announced its acquisition of Spartan Nash. And this is a deal valued at $1.77 billion US. And we talked a bit about CNS because they were part of the Kroger-Albertsons conversation during those acquisition talks a number of months back. But basically, CNS is a supplier for retailers, like a wholesaler. So they supply to retailers across the country, but they also own some smaller grocery chains like Piggly Wiggly in the US, Grand Union in the US, smaller grocer chains here. Spartan-Nash also has a food wholesaler piece of its overall portfolio, also owns some grocery store banners that you may not have heard of. Family Fare, Martin Supermarket, D&W Fresh Market, those are them. But together, the combined two companies will have about 60 distribution centers and will serve close to 10,000 independent retail locations in the US, which is huge. So the deal will enable supply chain efficiencies, better pricing for customers as a result of that. Ultimately will allow independent retailers to compete better against big box retailers. And this is a huge deal, and it's expected to close at the end of this year.
Wow, that's good news for independents, Rachel.
Okay, Barry, so super hyped to have Andy Murray back again as a podcast guest to talk all about his very recent, just returned from France from Cannes. And looking forward to our discussion to hear, Andy, what your thoughts and point of view were on the event this year. So welcome back. We're really happy to have you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Barry. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. I always have so much fun. And hopefully today I don't have to do 10 insights in 10 seconds or 10 or one per minute. We can unpack some of this.
Well, Andy, no pressure, but this will probably be our number one pod of the year, just like last year with you. So we're just thrilled to have you back from Cannes. So just tell us, what was the vibe there like? I mean, you're fresh back. You just landed back in Northwest Arkansas in the last 24 hours. I mean, what was the vibe? What was it like there this year?
I thought it was great, and it really depends on, how you approach Cannes and your plan going in and what your expectations are out of it. I was probably noticed a little less with the brands were there. And as I talked to many different brand people pre-Cannes, many of them were just under a lot of, back half of the year pressure and travel cuts and such. And for many brands, it's like, that's not a good look to be, in the south of France on the Riviera for a week, spending, umpteen amounts of dollars on travel and such. And so it's probably more a limitation of just the tough business climate we're in right now.
No question about that. And I looked at some of your notes, which you were so kind to share. And, you kind of mentioned this year, the event was kind of shifting maybe away from pure creativity towards maybe this sort of new blend of media, data, creativity. And I was just curious, what's your thoughts on that? Is that enhancing or diluting the creative spirit, at the event? And, you were on the ground at the events and then in some really, really cool, intimate settings. So what's your take on all that?
Yeah, that trend, I started going to Cannes in 2004. And so I've seen it evolve over the years and probably been in 8 or so times. And the transition, if you will, bit of focus toward media, data, and technology has been there for a while, happening at Cannes, and a lot of people, talk about that. I saw, a lot of focus on creativity, but it was more of a both and. And if you look at Cannes in 3 different experiences, you've got the Croisette, which is the path, road, walkway, if you will, the beach, where a lot of the technology platforms, you'll see Spotify, Meta, Google, Pinterest, Influential, will be, having sessions and event space set up. Then you have the Palais, which is where the work is. And that's where you get to see the work in the basement, everything that's getting shortlisted and the awards. And then the awards ceremonies are all in the Palais, which is really the reality of the work. And then you really have the third piece, which is the people, which are the networking sessions and so on and so forth. And I think, if you go and experience all 3 of those and try to experience all 3, you get the best experience out of Cannes. And I did, run into a few people that spent almost all their time, on the Croisette with dealing with different partners and no time in the Palais, which is unfortunate because that's where the work comes together and you really kind of see the full canvas. But and then some that spend all their time in the Palais and not any time really with the different partners and platforms to see what's there. What I've always found is that great creativity requires constraints. And by having the media, data, and technology partners there, they create new campuses with new technologies that open up the aperture for what's possible with creativity. And then sometimes they create additional constraints because of shorter lengths of time to deal with, to be able to communicate. So you really need both in order to enhance that creative culture and really see what's possible. So from my perspective, I thought it was a beautiful thing to have the constraints, if you will, of the enablers and the, where media and data and technology are going alongside the creativity, because I've never seen a creative brief win that didn't have some tight constraints in it somewhere.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good answer, right, Rachel? It's both.
Yeah, it's both. I know when I sometimes go to conferences and if I'm only in one particular section, it is really hard to understand how it comes together. It could be a really unique technology, but you really don't conceptualize it until you see it all. So it's a really, really good point, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, when I walk to Crusette, you see a lot of interesting things, but it's kind of like walking the backside of a big tapestry. You're seeing all these different, colors and threads and things, but then it's like, okay, how does this all come together? And that's when when you walk into the Palais, it's almost like flipping around and seeing the tapestry, because that's the reality of whatever's manifesting in the Crusette. And that's usually probably what was there 2 years ago is now manifesting in the tapestry. You could actually see it come together.
Yeah, very cool. So from your Croisette exploration, can you talk to us a little bit about one emerging technology that stood out as most likely to revolutionize the bridge between advertising and commerce? And then we wonder, did you then see it ticked as a finalist or a winner in the Palais?
Well, the answer is no in the Palais, because that takes time, for that to come through. But I saw a couple of interesting things that I spent some time with. One is with Reddit and what they're doing, and spent some time with a product manager at Reddit, looking at what they're doing and the deep insights and conversations. Reddit's not an algorithm based thing; it's an upvote downvote kind of thing, and it's real conversations. And they've done a great job of building out insights windows and way to get insights through for brands and others from that rich data, and have formed interesting partnerships. There was one announced with CBS, with the retail media connection there, is to be able to connect the dots between what you can get from that. And so I was pretty excited about what kind of data and insights we can start seeing out of Reddit, which is way more than just product reviews. You're getting actual conversations, and some brands are using that for product development insights and so on. And that does play out in the Palais, because everything starts with a deep insight on the work. And if you walk the Palais in the basement, there's these posters set up of each campaign and entry. And it's just like, what's the insight? Is the very beginning piece. And I think there's just a rich treasure trove that I saw sitting inside of Reddit that they're now enabling access to that in ways that are new and unique, and especially connecting into retail media. I also saw Flowcode. Tim Armstrong's the CEO, founder of Flowcode. He was at AOL and Google, and just an incredible entrepreneur. But they're changing the interface for something as simple as QR codes and barcodes and scanning by adding first party data capture from device IDs that are, again, opening up what kind of data is available to be able to be more targeted and connected and get insights around how the screen and advertising to commerce space can be closed and create better, richer interfaces there. So a lot of people would be giving up on QR codes, but they're looking at how can we continue to reinvent that to close the gap between advertising and commerce.
Yeah, that sounds like a really amazing opportunity, especially as we talk about the continued push for omni-channel technology, and how do you drive the retail media portion in store, which, as we know, is a massive opportunity for really all retailers and advertisers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also this gives brands a bit more first party data access too, because they can grab those device ID identities from the scans and be able to share in that data. And so I'm really looking forward to see how they continue to evolve Flowcode and through clean rooms, and what can happen with that connection to first party data at retail media.
Andy, wanted to talk a little bit about generative AI, and you noted in your visit to Cannes, Gen AI's presence in the Croisette, but limited examples in award-winning work, apart from, you mentioned, or we had chatted earlier about the Oreo cricket campaign. What do you think is holding Gen AI back from more creative prize-winning executions?
Well, I think Gen AI is showing up in a lot of the processes of advertising, but not something that's visibly obvious in the Palais as work. And quite honestly, it's hard to see, how much of the work has been supported by Gen AI because it's not there as obvious, which I'm not sure you really want at the end of the day when you're a consumer to know I'm interacting with Gen AI, right? And so that's what I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the Palais in an obvious way. Or if that's even good longer term. But, interesting, Apple's VP of Marketing Communications, Tor Myron, delivered a powerful opening keynote message at Cannes. He said, the good news is that AI is not going to kill advertising. The bad news is AI is not going to save advertising either. And we have to save advertising ourselves. And that's going to be believing in what's always made it special, which is the human creativity side. So I think, it's just a bit early to see, Gen AI in obvious ways. There was a few examples there that I saw, but I didn't see it pushing creativity to any new level. I saw it probably allowing agility to be done in some of the campaigns I saw to be able to execute faster or to get to that insight faster using Gen AI, where you don't have to open up so many dig sites in order to come up with, what's the real human truth there. But I expect to see a lot more of Gen AI partnered, enabled work in the next couple of years for sure.
I agree with that, Andy. And, I'm sure everybody was talking about the efficiency. I mean, we just, maybe in some cases, respectfully, we just need fewer people at times working on campaigns. And certainly Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, they're all down the path with these sort of Gen AI-enabled innovation engines, which are pretty impressive. Andy, let me ask you this.
I'm sorry, Barry. I just want to throw up.
Yeah.
I sent you a link this morning on one that you might want to talk about. That where it was brought up in one of the talk sessions where this guy, a dentist in LA, was using some Gen AI tools and put together this really cool, ad campaign that he runs once a week, and it's like sold out. And it's just like one person, maybe a $230 investment of tools to create this thing that went viral post-Cannes even because it really brought, a gorilla that was drinking beer and parachuting that were three things, but then all of a sudden brought together was just incredible, like jaw-dropping moment. And so will that transform advertising in the future? I don't know. But, that was never entered into Cannes as an award. But I did see some things like that was like, wow, this could be really interesting.
I loved that example. And someone who owns a small business, I could definitely see us using that, with our medical spa. And Andy, isn't it just the times we're living in that, that happens so fast, it's going viral, at Cannes, and you're seeing it there. It's just kind of wild, right?
It is wild. And that was also another thing that I saw as a general theme in walking the floor. A lot of the winning campaigns, a significant number, had quite a bit of earned media. They weren't driven by paid media. They were really driven by earned media with a powerful insight to engage the consumer and allow the consumer to be co-creator and drive that brand forward and participate, especially in sports with fans and fandom. But all those things are really captured cultural moments that you've got to have a lot of agility and be very quick to do. And I think that's where Gen AI can help speed up that process to get there faster.
For sure. And we'll put that, link of the ad. It's just pretty spectacular. Andy, just building on that, in this idea of co-creation and consumer engagement, in your notes, you pointed out there were several cases where consumers became, really co-creators, for example, with Heineken. And so, which examples maybe inspired you or surprised you the most in terms of engagement and what brands can learn from that? That's typically not what we do in many cases, at least legacy brands, that is. But so what's your takeaway there?
Yeah, I think first of all, the insight, you got to start with an insight about the human condition and people, right? And that's really something that you've got to refine and go deep on to understand that. And then once you have that powerful insight, then what's the insight about your brand that really is important? And the Heineken example was quite interesting because they had they've always been about pubs. And, they had a campaign called I have a hard time saying it, Pub Succession, where this barkeeper, pub owner named McLaughlin, was wanting to sell his pub. And so they created this, thing to like a casting call to go out, that went social and pretty viral to find a McLaughlin that could take over his bar. And Heineken supported that. And they had tens of thousands of McLaughlins across the globe, putting in their stories and trying to, make a case on why they should be the pub owner of this McLaughlin's. And I thought, that's really interesting. Here now the consumer is co-creating and being part of that in that earned media space. A very simple idea, but it's very powerful. And so it's a lot of those where the idea itself invited engagement and co-creation. And that was actually pretty common to see in a lot of the award-winning work.
Really neat. Let me ask you this, just, on retail media, we have to bring that up. I just thought it was pretty interesting that, Andy Jassy wins Media Person of the Year. Yes, Amazon wins that. So did you feel this year that commerce had a bigger presence? And as with respect to that, retail medias, I do know from talking to others that were there that, many of the big RMNs were there, but what was it really like? And just curious.
I did get to spend quite a bit of time with different retailers there as well. And what I saw with retail media, again, it depends on, where you spent your time at Cannes and what your objectives were. And so if you were going there to really see the latest in retail media, you would definitely see that. And there were a lot of new partnerships talked about in terms of what was getting launched there with like Roku or like CVS with what they were doing with Reddit. And, so a lot of partnership, new opportunities to connect were there. And I had a lot of conversations individually with retailers on what they're doing with retail media. But it's really, when you get into the palette and the work, it's not necessarily something you're going to see as obvious, right? It doesn't really show up. And that's okay, because it's an enabling technology. I wouldn't expect it to show up. But what the insights that brands are getting from the insight data, the first party data, the ability to move quickly and identify and personalize does show up in the work. And one has to expect that is getting enabled by the partnerships with retailers and how they use the retail media network environments behind it. And so I've heard some experts say they felt the retail media presence was a bit less than maybe last year in terms of, new announcements and focus. But I had quite a few meetings with different retailers, and they all had, stepping on their partnerships, how to get off platform opportunities to reach the consumer more visible, what Walmart's doing with Vizio. I mean, I think it's still a time of early development and moving and energy in that direction. And I didn't see a step back at all.
Well, that's good to hear.
Andy, I wanted to talk a little bit about just the increase in award stage teams. In the past 3 to 5, now it's 8 to 10 plus people. And I think really this illustrates the complexity of winning today. How do you think that the larger team orchestration enhances outcomes? And then also, what's a trade-off to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was an observation for me watching the awards, and one person that had not been to Cannes before, I was sitting next to, said, gosh, how come there's so many people up on stage? And it's called the walk up, where you get the award and then they walk the team up to wins the gold. And I hadn't really thought about it until they brought it up. And I said, yeah, you're right. And when I started thinking back to 2004, it was maybe 3 to 5 people would go up to accept it. And I was seeing, 10 plus. And so I did some Gen AI research, some deep research to look at photos of Cannes Awards happening in 2004 versus now. And even the Gen AI came back and said, yeah, there's definitely a trend here of many more people. And I think it really demonstrates and illustrates that you can't win a gold today without harmonizing and orchestrating a number of specialized teams. And, that is one that it's just really clear. Where in the past you could, if you think of a world of just linear TV and winning, now winning requires being really good at probably a social compellent with earned media, with some performance marketing, some media innovation to go with that. And so you add all that up, it's quite an orchestration of success. And I think, in my opinion, when they give the gold lion, they should also probably give that team a gold baton for masterful orchestration, because that's now table stakes that you're going to have to be able to harmonize an idea to execute across a large group of people. And the joy you saw when you see that many people on stage hugging, you know that they have gone through a battle or have done something special. But I don't think we're going to see a return of a 3 to 5 person team going up there. Maybe in the short term, at least it's possible in 3 to 5 years as Gen AI maybe reduces some of those roles. But the power of aligning a team, and my belief is there's a lot of really good gold winning ideas that could win gold, but never win gold because they can't get through the orchestration required and the teamwork required and the culture required and the organizational leadership required to get it from a great idea on a storyboard to actually in the market.
Yep. Really interesting. Andy, I just also wanted to ask you, just in general for you personally, like of all the hallway conversations and private dinners you had, like what's the single most provocative insight that you'll bring back to your bigQuest clients, and how can our listeners apply that insight, into their own planning cycles?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rachel. I mean, first, I'm incredibly optimistic about the future. Some may see dark clouds, and but in every dark cloud there's a silver lining, and in that silver lining is actually where I think you find the gold and the innovation. So what I see coming back is a couple of things that are important. One is I think there's an abundance of creativity in the industry, but there's a poverty of courage and a poverty of conviction to break free and take risks. The barriers are not in the technology. I mean, there's loads of insights to be found and loads of problems to solve. And according to the Lions State of Creativity 2025 report, only 13 respondents view their companies as risk friendly, while 29% of brands admit to being highly risk adverse. And that's significant because risk-taking brands generate 4 times higher profit margin, according to research by Warwick and by Kantar, you guys yourself. And so you have to be willing to take risk and do that. And I don't always see that courage there to try new things and to really press the envelope. And my own Asta story, I wanted to Asta in April of 2000 or March of April of 2016, and we were running a -1 to 2 comp, and which is not good in retail, right? We're holding market share, but it was a declining category. We were running a -1 to 2 comp, and I had loads of ideas I wanted to try, but the general thinking at the time from our leadership team was, you know what, we just need to double down and work harder on the current way we do it versus, upsetting the apple cart with a bunch of new things. And that remained the mindset until probably July when we hit a -7 comp. And when we hit a -7 comp, that was the best thing that ever could happen to us, because then I had permission to break things, because it was clear the current way of doing it is not going to work. It's not going to get us out of this, work harder, work smarter, better data, more performance. That wasn't the way forward. We had to change direction. And I think, that's where I see the future going. We could be coming up to some real challenging times. And I hope what happens is we can break some of that momentum of let's just try harder. Let's just, maybe more bricks, less straw, and we could work our way through it, or just cost cut. But I think there's a fundamental shift required. And sometimes that takes some really hard truths for an organization to take risk and try new things. And I think that's, what I'm going to be taking back is to, try to encourage that risk-taking leadership mindset and embolden more creative and conviction toward new ideas, because we've got to be experimenting. I think the future's coming at us way faster than we can adapt, and just executing the way we've been doing it is not going to work.
Gosh, Andy, I love that. A poverty of courage. I mean, that just aligns with everything we're learning about leadership in the new age. And just playing it safe, well, that's just not really going to work. So I think that's so strong. I wanted to ask you, Andy, you were kind of coaching me a couple of weeks ago
Mhm.
about leadership in the age of AI. And you brought up two topics that I have since studied, and I've just learned a lot. I've just got a lot of value from these 2 points you made. And I was wondering maybe if you could just speak to both of them.
Yeah.
Again, context of just leadership in the age of AI. First, you gave some real strong lessons from this book, Team of Teams. And I just wondered, could you share a little bit about that? I just thought that was so insightful.
Yeah, when I was at Walmart, Doug McMillan had General Stanley McChrystal come, and he had just published in 2015 Team of Teams. And he was in charge of special operations of forces for the war in Iraq. And you think about his challenge here. The battlefield had completely changed, and it wasn't tank on tank and tonnage on tonnage. It really was a Fallujah, house to house, a very different type of environment externally in warfare. And you've got Navy SEALs, you've got the Army Rangers, you've got the Navy, and all of the different special forces that have to come together. And what he did was really had thought through ways of working, mindset, and how do you organize and communicate and get all these different groups working together in a real-time way with almost a shared consciousness of what's working. And we heard that, and it was like, wow, that's pretty profound. But at that time, the industry wasn't really creating that same kind of cultural shift of how do you do business. And I think he was 10 years ahead of his time, because I look at it now, and now we're entering a space where I think that industry does look like that. And we have this real tendency to say, you know what, we've got too many silos. And let's call those silos special forces, right? So we just got to flatten all the silos. And you know what? Army Rangers, you have a helmet, you've got a uniform and a gun. How's that different than the Army? So let's just make everybody Army.com, and we'll kill off the specialty, because the complexity of the silos are too much to deal with. And so you hear a lot from CMOs and organizations on the silos are killing us. And I think what we can learn from General Stanley McChrystal, it's not the silos, it's the ways of working, because those silos have built up competencies that are really needed, because it's not getting less complex. It's not getting easier. But because we don't really have good operating models and management models and leadership models that can be that agile and communicate in real time and connect the dots with people, that's what's failing us. And so sometimes as organizations, we oversimplify and say, let's just get rid of the silos, which is like saying, well, we really don't need the Navy SEALs, because again, Army.com has people that look a lot like them. And so that's the mindset sometimes is oversimplifying that this complexity we're dealing with is not going to go away. And yet the silo challenge is becoming more difficult for us to harmonize and orchestrate that. And I think we're going to need real maestros, people that have the skills to work across organizational boundaries are the ones that are going to be, super important versus those that are really deep into one specialty.
Just love that. Just love that. I've been studying that a bit, and I just think that he was about 10 years too early, Andy, as you said. And just building on that, the last question is just around leadership. You gave some really sound coaching on just, maybe you want to be a generalist in terms of where we're heading with data and AI. Can you just kind of maybe share what you were thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're going back to where, you think about the Renaissance period, which was the largest, one of the greatest times of innovation, and where we saw 500-year ideas start to come about, where in architecture and all these different disciplines. And what we saw at that time was that the polymath or Renaissance man, that's where it came from, that time period where, you could be a doctor, but you could also be a poet. And you could, be a lot of these different areas, and having that more a generalist in terms of being able to see across, but then mastery enough to be able to work in multiple disciplines. And I think, that's the kind of leadership it's going to be, because those really specialized tasks are probably going to be taken over by Gen AI, right? Some type of agentic AI is going to be able to do that. And it's the ones that have the broadest perspective. I work a lot with universities and lecture at the University of Arkansas. And I really do believe and coach students that, if you've got a chance, study liberal arts, understand psychology, understand a broader look at the world, because it's the ability to see those patterns and connect the dots is going to be the real career building up capability. You might actually reinvent your capabilities from a career standpoint every 2 years. But the ability to think and see patterns and work as a generalist that can communicate and connect with people, I really do believe is the real skill set that's going to be required as a leader in the next couple of years.
So right. I mean, we're just not going to compete, in depth on verticals with
No.
AI. That's just, we all know that's not going to happen. So I just think that's so right, Andy.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I mean, I hope it. I think it starts in the universities, and for sure, and trying to come up with more programming and curriculum that allows students to get a really broad experience before they graduate. And we've in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been a little bit deeper into data science and more specialty areas. But I think it's going to require a different way to educate students.
Andy, I agree, and I love that. And it's this whole world approach. There's some circumstances where what the right way is, but in most cases, there's not one right way. Like everyone has a different perception of what's right, and it's the same in business. Like each functional group within an organization is critical to the success of that organization. So you have that person understanding that, as opposed to marketing's the right way to go, or finance is the only right way to go, whatever that is. Like having an understanding that it's all of you together that's going to bring the most success, I think is key in that many organizations. Some have that, but I don't think many have that. So I think that's really.
I think you're right. I mean, I think if there's one kind of general piece about a journalist that is important, is the ability to understand and spot a deep insight. And, I mean, this is Retail Insights, right? Podcast, and Kantar has been, has got a whole competency in how do you get to a deep insight. And I think in the last 7 years, we've not really been that passionate about finding those deep insights and human truths. And I think that's a real craft there that's got to be done. And then the second is finding a problem worth solving that is really worth solving, that'll move the needle and bringing those worlds together. The ability of a journalist is to ask the right question. The ability of a mastery specialist is to have the right answers. And I think that the right question's way more important today than it is having the right answer, to your point, because the answers are going to continue to change.
Agree. And to have the person to really listen in and lock into what does all of this mean, I think is key as well. Andy, anything else that you'd like to bring up about your time in Cannes, or any other topics that you'd like to kind of sum up and leave the audience with today?
I think it's really, and I saw it at Cannes, and I think it's important even more so. And I started to go down this road of, the humanity required to lead in a time of AI. I think it's going to move way faster than our ability to adapt. Andy Jassy put out a manifesto of the future last week while we're at Cannes. And I encourage people to go read that, because he talks about the speed of generative AI and agentic AI and how that could transform. And it's going to go faster than our ability to adapt. Adapt our organizations, adapt from the human condition, adapt our own skill changes. And I just think it's important for us to be getting our heads around the human understanding of what does leadership look like? What does ideas look like? What does creativity look like? And be exploring and really pushing ourselves to go deeper into this space, because I fear the technology has got the human ramifications behind. Hasn't even been, no one's thinking about that. And I think that's going to have a profound impact, more so than we probably can anticipate. So I think we need to be thinking about that more right now.
Andy, one last build. Let's tell people what you're up to at the University of Arkansas. I just think what you're doing there is pretty exciting. I shared that on LinkedIn. I just think folks ought to know about that, because it's a real service, I think, to students everywhere, certainly Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, well, my wife and I decided to fund an endowed chair focused on the future of commerce. And why an endowed chair? Well, you need a faculty person that is connected with deep industry experience and deep academic credentials to further research and really be on campus and driving the future forward, because curriculum needs to adapt. We need to be looking at, how do we get student experiences with industry in a way that they could walk in the door more future fit for future ready. And we think an endowed chair would allow a faculty to have position focused on that. And that's something that will be there then in perpetuity because it's the way that it's funded as an endowed chair. So really excited about that. I think there's going to be a lot of great things happening as a result of having that full-time, highly qualified individual in the university driving that culture. And it's, the Walton College of Business has been an innovator, number one supply chain in the US, been doing all kinds of things with RFID. But then as we look at the state of commerce, all these areas, commerce is a supply chain problem. It's a marketing problem. It's a, business model problem, and it's a student equipping problem. And so I'm really excited about it and looking forward to getting that chair filled.
What a legacy, huh, Rachel? I mean, wow, that's
Amazing.
so
Yes.
cool.
Amazing. Very cool, Andy. Well, thank you, Andy, so much for being on the podcast. We always enjoy our conversations with you, and we hope you come back very soon.
Thanks,
Okay.
Andy.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It's always fun.
All right, Barry. Well, one of our favorite guests of all time, Andy Murray, back on our podcast again. And it's always a really insightful conversation and really fun to hear kind of fresh from the airplane, many different insights that Andy gleaned from Cannes in France. And our top five takeaways for the audience are as follows. Number one, Andy reinforced that creativity and constraints both drive content excellence. Andy emphasized this. The presence of media, data, and technology partners at events like Cannes creates new opportunities and constraints that enhance creative culture. Andy talked about how the Hamilton Monkey Dennis video was trending at Cannes, and I mentioned that I actually post podcast recording with Andy. That my sons were like, "Mom, how did you know about this video with the monkey? Like, it's all over TikTok." And so I was kind of cool in the moment for them. And everybody was talking about it from a creative standpoint. So this type of AI generated advertising, which is really made very, very quickly and for very, very cheaply, hosted on platforms like TikTok, show how any small company can leverage media automation to drive social virality, breakthrough creativity, and brand growth. And we'll put the link to that in the notes. Number two, emerging technologies drive new marketing models. Andy highlighted the potential of emerging technologies like Reddit's deep insights and flow codes, innovative use of QR codes. These are the types of technologies that are revolutionizing the bridge between advertising and commerce. To be a world-class marketer also requires being incredibly fluent in emerging technology. Number three, consumer co-creation accelerates. So Andy discussed the importance of consumer co-creation in campaigns, like Heineken's Pub Succession campaign is an example where consumers actively participated, making the campaign much more engaging and much more impactful.
And number four was Andy was really just kind of passionate about generalist skills and how that's going to be so important heading into this new sort of AI and agentic area, and spoke a little bit about sort of sense makers. Generalists will be in demand for their ability to see patterns across all the data and AI models and make sense of all this complexity, coordinating across different areas of expertise. And so this shift towards generalist skills, he really believes is essential for winning in the evolving and sort of next commerce landscape. And then number five, organizational adaptation equals winning, no question about it. He talked about how so many different companies, and in that story about the military in the past, was just a bunch of sort of organizational silos that really desperately needed seamless integration across functions to really win. And for CPGs and retailers, restaurants, we'll need that to drive a better customer experience and more transactions. So it involves a bit of rethinking the traditional organizational design and moving to more of a team of teams narrative. And that's the book that he referenced, where the general was sort of pushing the entire armed force during the Iraq War for far more interconnectedness, more of a shared consciousness, if you will, for adapting to this rapidly changing environment. And essentially, that's a proven factor towards winning this team of teams approach. And maybe all of that was a little ahead of its time. And so I think it's something for all of us to think about going forward as a way to win. So as usual, Rachel, Andy was just educating us all, and it's one of the smartest people I've ever known in my entire life around just about everything, and certainly brands, marketing, and commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. I always learn so much from Andy, and we'll have him back soon, Barry. So looking forward to that next one. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much again to Andy Murray for this amazing discussion. We hope you enjoyed our show. And as always, thanks for listening to the Kantar Retail Sound Bites podcast.
And a special thank you to Victoria for producing and marketing our podcast. If you have any questions or anything, just reach out to Rachel and I on LinkedIn, and we will see you in 2 weeks.